is Sophia the Shadowhunter, and today I'm reviewing D-Day by Stephen E Ambrose, June 6, 1944. This was a wonderful book. I started reviewing this book a couple days ago, and I still don't feel like I had the right information to read this. It was a wonderful book. I highly recommend it. If you guys have read it or you want to read it, please leave a comment down below and why you want to read and what you liked about it. This was an amazing, epic story about D-Day and the soldiers and what they went through in the government and the fighting and on D-Day and on Normandy and what was going on in the country and how they were worried, and you know how some had the idea that some were for sure that they were going to get through it and they didn't, and some did. And they just had to make up their mind why they were being scared. You know, am I going to live? Am I going to die? And so some people rushed out and thinking they were going to live and they lost their lives, and other people didn't, and that's just a very sad, hard battle about war, but people did this for freedom. And one of my favorite things is at the end of this book. Let me read it for you guys. And this is so true. But it takes strong people to do this, and I'm thankful for that these people were willing to do this for America's freedom. It says, I think it's just overwhelming to think of the lives that were given for that principle, paying a terrible price on the speech alone on that day, 2,000 casualties, but they did it so that the world could be free. It just shows what freemen will do rather than be slaves. It just shows what freemen will do rather than be slaves. And that is true. And then up here it says, when can their glory fade? Tennyson asked about the Light Brigade, and so I asked about the men of D-Day. All the wild charge they made, all the world wondered, honored the change they made. And then here's something from General Eisenhower, who started with his "Okay, let's go" order, gets this last war in 1964 on D-Day plus 20 years. He was interviewed on Omaha Beach by Walter Cronkite. Looking out the channel, Eisenhower said, "You see these people out here swimming and sailing their little pleasure boats and taking advantage of the nice weather and the lovely beach," Walter said, "and it's almost unreal to look at it today and remember what it was. But it's a wonderful thing to remember what those fellows 20 years ago were fighting for and sacrificing for, what they did to preserve our way of life. Not to conquer any territory, not for any ambitions of our own, but to make sure that Hitler could not destroy their freedom in the world." And the other part, I read it first, so I read it backwards, but I'll go ahead and read it again. I think it's just overwhelming to think of the lives that were given for that principle, paying a terrible price on this beach alone on that day, 2,000 casualties, but they did it so that the world could be free. It just shows what freemen will do rather than be slaves. And so this is just an incredible book about D-Day. I feel like I need to read it again. Whenever I read books like this, it's harder for me because I read it for enjoyment, pleasure, and education. And I think I read it like I'm reading a normal book to an extent, because I read most of the books like this, but there still comes to a point when it's not, you know, it's not like I'm reading historical fiction. This is nonfiction. And I'm able to gobble up nonfiction really fast and pretty well. And I think I did this pretty well, except I think it took me a little bit longer to read it than I should. I also probably could have read it a little bit slower and it would be better, because I noticed that for instance, when I read a book really slow, and it took me over a week to finish a book, which it normally doesn't do that. But when I do, I realize that I love the story more and I'm more involved in the characters, because when you get through it quicker, you don't get acquainted with the characters as better. And I feel that's kind of what happened with this book. Obviously, I don't think it wasn't in depth on certain characters. At some point it was, but it was a great book and I highly recommend it. If you guys have this book, please leave your comments down below. I'd love to read more of Stephen E Ambrose books. He's a great writer. And I'll see you guys next time in another video. Goodbye.